Hello, all of you I Can Do Anything podcast listeners. This is your host, Robin Steckel. Let me tell you a little bit about our guest today, Mr. Derek Toshner. Derek Toshner is a Strong First certified master instructor and the co-founder of TNT Fitness Results. Derek is a 14-time TSC division champ. He's also a 5-time NCAA national champion in track and field and competed at the USA World and Olympic Team Trials from 2003 to 2005. He has held his high school and university school records in the hurdles for 20 plus years and was inducted into their halls of fame. Derek and I were both in Jackson Hole in July of 2023. Derek was climbing the Grand Tetons and I was volunteering at Jackson for 29029. Derek has also climbed Aconcagua, South America's tallest peak, and Denali, North America's tallest peak. He is married to his high school sweetheart, which he thinks technically makes her stronger than him. And as you can see from my background and a couple of pictures in Derek's background, if you're watching on YouTube, we both have the Grand Tetons on. So Derek, why don't we just jump into your climbing history and then we'll backtrack into your business and professional history, because those pictures look pretty darn exciting.
Yeah, they're very cool. I love the Tetons. I love being in Jackson, Wyoming, and there's just something, I don't know, something amazing about that mountain range. They're so beautiful and just a good challenge to climb. Very difficult to climb and one of the toughest in the lower 48 states, I think.
Why is that? Why is it more difficult than maybe the Rockies or the Appalachians?
Sure. Yeah, so in the Rockies, you're typically starting somewhere between 10 and 12,000 feet, and you go to 14,000. And there's some difficult ones there, but Grand Teton there behind you and behind me here, you start at about 6, and you have to go almost to 13.7. So it's a lot of elevation gain. It's about 10, 11 miles in, 10, 11 miles out. So you're putting on almost a marathon.
Mm-hmm,
and then there's some technical, there's no real easy way up. There's always technical rock climbing involved. So yeah, but I started climbing in college. I picked it up. My degree's in exercise science and I needed a one credit class. And so I picked up rock climbing. And next thing you know, found myself in Red Rocks, Nevada, just outside Las Vegas on a climbing trip in college. And my brother picked it up with me. My brother is one of my best friends. And so it was just kind of like a life sport that him and I could do together. And we never set it down. Kind of jumping a little bit into business. I sold a large business of mine back at the end of 2015. So basically 2016. And then I just really got into climbing a little bit more. And then lost another business that I had kind of tragically. And then I just kind of submersed myself in climbing almost as an escape to get away from reality, I guess you could say. And what's interesting about that is, you know, a career reemerged out of that. So
tell us about your business, because this podcast focuses a lot on the struggles and the achievements. And I have yet to meet anybody that I've interviewed, or even just hearing other people's stories, that did not have some type of a struggle. And what always fascinates me is what makes people continue on, even though they're struggling and possibly at their worst, at rock bottom, they're facing financial difficulties, partner, spouse struggles. And then they just come out of the ashes and make it successful. So I do know that you have a successful business, but take us through some of those not so great times and what you learned from that.
Sure. I think I have to take you all the way back to when I was a kid. You can
tell
red beard, ginger complexion. I was, you know, the saying, the redheaded stepchild, right? I don't know. There's some kind of truth to that, right? We're kind of like outcast a little bit, or you feel that way when you're growing up, at least. Maybe a lot of people do, but I definitely did. I loved sports. My whole family was super athletic. Unfortunately, I wasn't at the time for whatever reason. I was kind of this skinny, dorky little kid. And I loved wrestling, but I wasn't good at all. And track and field, I don't know, I was fast. I always thought I was fast. But I remember being a sophomore in high school, and one of the upperclassmen said, Derek, they were asking what I wanted to do. And I said, I want to do hurdles. And one of the seniors said, Derek, you suck at hurdles. I'm like, oh, great. I kind of suck at everything, I guess. And I don't know, I kind of, I was just angry. I was like an angry little kid, and I would go home and I would work out because I wanted to prove like my self-worth, right? So interestingly enough, I really started to dive into exercise and how to get better and stronger and these sorts of things. And I became interested in that, and it ended up being a career. Long story short, my wrestling career ended up taking off at the same time as my track and field career. Won 3 national titles in the 400-meter hurdles, went to the Olympic trials, the USA World Team trials in track. So it is kind of funny that senior said, Derek, you suck at hurdles. And I was just motivated. I guess my internal drive was, at that point in my life, was to like prove my self-worth, right? And it became a fascination. I was just so disciplined to training. And that went right into college, and everything I was learning in exercise science, I was applying to my own training. So I was essentially my best student, because, if I learned something, I could say, okay, Derek, this is what you learned, how to apply that, and then put that into practice. I already had the habit of routine formed for training. And so then out of college, after running Olympic trials and all that, just started a career in fitness, right? And so, yeah, go ahead. You have something to say.
I do. I was going to say, you were just saying how you were, I don't think you used the word motivation, but I was trying to think of what word you used, because what happens when you don't feel like getting up at 6 o'clock to do a workout? And I'm just using 6 as a time, but what happens when you don't want to get up at such and such a time? And what does consistency look like to you? Because my word for 2023 and my logo for 2023, I always have a word in a logo.
That's awesome.
Is consistency. But I've been seeing and hearing and reading about consistency isn't linear. Consistency can go up and down, and motivation isn't going to get you there, because goodness knows I woke up to 20 degrees in Madison, Wisconsin this morning, and I wasn't getting out of bed. So you had made that comment about you continued to learn and grow, and you kept up that pace. What did that look like? Because was it really linear? You made it sound like it was so easy. And
yeah,
truth be told, not everybody has it that easy.
Yeah, interestingly enough, that senior told me that I sucked at hurdles, and then I made it to state as a junior. So the very next year I went to state. I hit the last hurdle and took second. I lost by 0.06 seconds. And then so my drive the following year was to win a state championship. That was my goal the whole time. I always wanted to be a state champion in wrestling. Also, that was kind of my first passion, and I took second in the state my senior year in wrestling. So I had lost. So there's 2 losses there, right? Like I worked hard. That was like the one thing that really drove me to try to be consistent. And then my senior year, broke the state record in track at the sectional championships. Go to state, I'm favored by like 1.5 seconds. And I tripped over the last hurdle and I took 5th. And I like completely broke down, completely shut down. And was somewhat depressed. Obviously, when you train for 4 years, it's kind of that Olympic moment, really. You train for 4 years for something and then have a failure. Yeah, it's a little bit depressing. So I think leading up to that 4 years, I was always motivated by my goal. My goal did really drive me that hard. And
it was your why.
Yeah, and being an athlete, there's kind of built-in ebb and flow of consistency, because there's always an off season, right? And that's what I like to teach my clients too, is like a lot of times clients are always in the on season of weight loss. That's kind of like they're always trying to lose weight, this kind of carrot that's out there, and they never necessarily, a lot of people don't necessarily achieve their ideal. And I tell them, like, you can't be in weight loss season forever. No athlete is in that forever. They have an in season an off season, a postseason, a preseason, and then the in season next year. And you have to train yourself with cycles like that. Otherwise you just kind of get worn out and beat down. So,
Well, I'll
yeah.
jump in real quick, Derek. I had that recently where a couple friends, a family member was saying how, aren't you so disappointed? You're not getting the results that you're looking for. And I said, what results am I looking for? Well, you train constantly. I don't train constantly. Nobody trains constantly. You don't have athletes that train constantly. I took the summer off. I did a great job and actually made progress taking the summer off, which I find to be really ironic, but people don't understand you can take time off. Consistency does not look like constant progression. So I am thrilled to hear you say that because that's the reality.
Oh, absolutely. My coach, he was dealing with professional and semi-professional athletes, and June would come around. He said, I don't want you to even look at a track until next September. Don't even touch a track, because you have to like unwind. You have to kind of mentally recharge. And so I think part of consistency is the mindset of what makes you consistent. So I train 5 days a week. I take 2 days a week off. But I consider those training days because I still feed my mind, and I consider recovering an act of progression towards my goal, right? So I'm not training today. I don't feel like I'm not making progress. I feel like I am making progress because part of my consistency is having a recovery day built in. And then when I go climb a big mountain like Grand Teton or Denali or Aconcagua, you do a big expedition like that and you come home and you're like, oh, okay, 6 months of training. I just need like at least 2 to 4 weeks off to recharge, relax, enjoy my family, and then think about what the next goal is. I don't have the fortitude or the energy, to come off a big expedition like that and then go right back into the next one. No one does that,
Yeah.
So yeah, or I shouldn't say no athlete that I've been around, NFL, MLB, they all take an off season.
Yeah.
So
all right, back on track with
yeah.
Olympic trials and then business.
Yeah. So interestingly enough, so hit the last hurdle my junior year, took second, tripped over the last hurdle. My senior year took fifth, go to qualify for the national championships as a freshman in college. And I sky the last hurdle and I don't make finals. Sophomore year, go to the national championships, sky the last hurdle again. I don't know, I have this last hurdle mental block apparently, that I just can't get over. And it was making it worse, really. Constantly thinking about that last hurdle and having messed it up now 4 years in a row. But I did make finals. I was one of the last people to make finals as a sophomore. And I'll never forget, my coach came up to me and he says, Derek, what are you so nervous about? He's like, you've done a lifetime of training. There's nothing you can do today to make yourself any better, but there's a lot you can do to make yourself worse. Just go out there and let your body perform to what you've trained it to do. Just relax and have fun. I went out there and won my first national title. And then
congratulations.
Yeah. And then never lost again after that. My junior and senior year was a repeat. So that kind of just, when athletics was over, just all that energy and focus in that kind of transition to business. And talk about an off season is I didn't really allow myself an off season with business, and I probably should have, right? And found myself kind of having a mental breakdown. I was growing 2 businesses simultaneously, one online and one brick and mortar. And they both exploded together. And I was so busy that I just didn't have time. My mom is an accountant, and so she keeps my books and she's my accountant. And she kind of came over to my house to talk to me about some things. I'm like, Mom, if you need to talk to me about business, you have to set an appointment. And she's like, I'm your mother. I don't have to set an appointment with you. I'm like, and that was kind of like this, okay, I need to like back the train up here. And I just wanted to be a dad. I wanted to be just more relaxed and have a central focus. And I was beginning to drop balls in both businesses. I couldn't juggle them both. I was, young, in my late 20s, early 30s, and I just couldn't couldn't put it together. I didn't really have a good business mentor to help me through a lot of it. And so I sold one business, sold the brick and mortar just to keep the online business. And I was like, whew, okay, well, this feels great. Ran that for about 4.5 years. And that business totally imploded. So lost everything in like a 7-minute conference call. And yeah, and overnight, like 99% of our household income was gone. And 17 years worth of work that I had put into that business was just.
How is that possible?
I know. It's a long story for maybe probably a different day. We don't have time today.
Okay. Sounds good.
But it was, I mean, it was incredibly depressing. It kind of took me back to high school when I had trained all that time. And I should kind of preface it with this. Our school was really good at wrestling. I started in 2nd grade. And at the end of practice, we'd all circle up and we'd hold hands, and the coach would give some kind of motivational speech, and he'd say, "What are we going to be?" And we'd yell, "Champions." And then, at the end, we'd raise our hand. He'd always ask us 3 times. And the last time we'd all put our hands up and yell "Champions." Well, kind of going into my high school career, the team set a goal. We're like, hey, we want to be state champions. So we would yell "State Champions." Good or bad, it is what it is, but that's what I always wanted to be, was a state champion. And then when I fell short my junior year of track, my senior year of wrestling, my senior year of track, it was just like this huge kind of like let down, disappointment, knowing that I'm never going to have another shot at this. That career is over. And didn't know what was to come with national titles and Olympic trials and all that kind of thing. But it was kind of that depressing time. And it felt that same way with business. It was like all ramping up towards this kind of ideal lifestyle that I wanted to create for myself and my family. And all that time and work was gone in an instant. It just kind of brought me right back to that time. And what got me through are a couple things. Number one, my faith. That played a big part of it. I started to think, like, what can't be taken away from me, right? I started to think back. I had helped over, hadn't helped over. I had helped 3 dozen people lose over 100 pounds. So numerous people losing, 10, 20, 60, 50 pounds. But I wanted to keep track of the 100-pound weight loss stories, because I thought that was just such a significant life transformation. And I helped 36 people do that. That could never be taken away from me, right? The joy and that I brought to people's lives and experiences, and the ways that I helped them, laughing, smiling, I could never take that away, right? And so that was one thing. I was like, okay, I'm gonna, rather than putting a focus on driving my business monetarily or whatever we call success in this world, I'm just gonna focus on making people's lives better and just enjoying the snot out of that. And whatever happens to my bottom line at the end of the month, like if it's red or it's black, it's just going to be what it's going to be. And my lifestyle will, I'll make it work with whatever. Right. And so I put my focus there. And then just knowing that, like, what happened from that track experience and where that led to, kind of knowing like something better is going to come out of this. Right. Like, I just don't know what it is. But I have to kind of reinvent myself. Couldn't restart my brick and mortar business. That was the first thing that I kind of wanted to do. Like, start that brick and mortar. But I had sold it to another person who was literally less than a mile away. And so I'm like, I can't really pick up my kids and move. They're rooted in school. My parents are getting older and want some help, and I want to be around them. And I want my kids to grow up around my parents. And so I'm like, I'm not going to move. What do I do? And I loved climbing, and I just kept throwing myself at climbing, hoping something would come. And I started teaching a course called All-Terrain Conditioning through Strong First. It's a school of strength. I was kind of into kettlebells and teaching that. And they said, Derek, you're into all this climbing. Like, would you teach this course for us called All-Terrain Conditioning? And started teaching the course. And through that course, met a strength coach who introduced me to a woman that was going to go for a world record on Aconcagua. It's the tallest peak in the Americas. And she was going to do, she was going for a speed ascent up and around the mountain. And so started training her. We went to Aconcagua, did a successful summit of that. She ended up not getting the record because of some weather issues they had. It snowed for like a month straight out over there. It was crazy. And you're not going to set a world record in knee-deep snow, right? So that didn't work out, but got home and was invited to join a Denali expedition. We had a successful summit of Denali. And through that, 29029 had heard of me, and they're like, okay, who is this guy that he's a trainer and he climbs all these mountains and he's training these people for mountain expeditions. We think we want him. And so boom, enter 29029, and that's how we got connected.
We did. I will let our listeners know that I am beyond obsessed with 29029. I'll give you a quick story, Derek, just because you don't know my backstory. I'm good friends with Jeremy Alexander Newsom, who was also at Jackson Hole with his beautiful wife, Svetlana. And Jeremy had mentioned back in 2019, I'm training for this thing. It's just an event. And I started asking him questions because I was not interested in doing this hiking business. And he went to Snow Basin in 2019. At the time, I was starting a podcast and wanted to come up with a name, come up with a theme. As Jeremy was climbing in Snow Basin in 2019, he came up with the name of the podcast, I Can Do Anything Podcast, and then gave me some ideas for topics. Jeremy's a thinker. You'll meet him at Whistler. Fast forward comes was it 2020? Everybody was doing virtual. I still wasn't really following 29029. I did follow Jeremy on the Ascent board, and so I started to see some pictures. 2021, he went to, did he go to Sun Valley in 2021? He must have. So I followed it a lot more in 2021. June of 2021, I sent an email to Mr. Matt Burrell and talked to him about, hey, I'm an overweight, middle-aged, basically not a couch potato, but certainly not doing long walks, not jogging. I am not a runner. Again, overweight. Don't do strength training. I go to a gym. I've been a member of a gym for 20 some years, but you don't understand the levels of intensity or the level of training, so I considered myself kindergarten level, basically grade school level. And then how do I'm really thinking about doing 2022. So fast forward, I sign up for Stratton because Jeremy said, if you pick a mountain and go with me, whatever mountain you pick, I will go with you no matter where you go. While Jeremy hadn't been to Stratton, I was concerned about the elevation, which I was smart to be concerned about the elevation. Pick Stratton. Jeremy and I go out to Stratton. I will never forget this. The Thursday before the event, we're sitting in all of the coach sessions. Voice of the Mountain, Colleen, had this talk. Colin comes up, has his talk. Mark comes up, has his talk. Coach Chris, Coach Brent, and I'll never forget, I believe it was either Coach Chris or Coach Brent said, when you're hiking through the night, blah, blah, blah. And I will never forget, I turned and looked at Jeremy and I said, what do you mean we're hiking through the night? And he said, oh, well, you have to in order to get the red hat. And I said, well, my only goal is to ascend once. And Jeremy's like, you'll do that. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know. Because when you see Stratton, boy, she's tight up at the top. Well, then fast forward, I did 5 ascents, but
yeah,
I hurt my hip flexor, which I found out is really called a PSOIS muscle or something like that. Psoas. And then my right glute went out. But nonetheless, I will never forget. I was like, what do you mean we're hiking through the night? Realized that I really had never thought about what hiking 29,029 feet meant. Still, for me, it was always just something to do for fun. It was, I'm going to hang out with Jeremy. We're going to have a great time. It's hiking. I didn't realize that you were hiking at grade. So 29029 is definitely, it's an ultra endurance event. They call it one of the world's hardest events in the world. So being tagged as a coach is really quite an honor, Derek.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. No, I love the community. Like you said, it's very such an enthusiastic, energetic crowd. Everybody's trying to get better, whatever that looks like,
Yeah.
and I think failures, the common saying now is you don't really fail, you either succeed or you learn, right? Which is learning is
Yeah.
a success in itself, right? It's just your mindset. This is like those
Yeah.
off days I said, a lot of people feel like, oh, I'm falling behind because I'm taking 2 weeks off. You're not falling behind because you took 2 weeks off. You're not
No,
going to ruin your,
no,
years of fitness work in 2 weeks. Let me tell you
no.
now, if you consistently start taking 2 weeks off, that's not a great thing. But, training for that, kind of setting that carrot out there, working towards that goal. And then once you either achieve that goal or learn from that goal, then take some time
Hmm.
off, reassess, and then set another goal and get back after it. And yeah, I think that's what long term, a lot of the weight loss clients that I've worked with, that's what they've set their goals to do, is other things, other endurance events, specifically outside.
Yeah.
Because when the goal is weight loss, once you achieve that 100-pound weight loss, for a lot of people would gain some weight back, it's because the goal was to achieve 100 pounds. Once they did it, hey, success, now I can coast. Like, no, now you got to do the
Now
things
it's
that,
maintenance. Yeah.
well, yeah, and do the things that you couldn't do when you had an extra 100 pounds on you, which
Yeah.
includes maybe a 29. Nobody wants to do that at 445 pounds, but
But
at
there
300,
have been some larger people that
yeah.
I
Oh yeah.
don't know of anybody that's achieved it, but I will also say the other brilliance of 29029, at least for me to just ascend once and be done, which I didn't. I did do 5, but was also 29029 isn't always about the red hat. So it's
Mhm.
also about the progress. It's about,
Yeah.
like I said, leveling up. I would say now I feel like I'm a little bit in high school now,
Yeah.
doing the strength and then start cutting the weight in a few months. But it's always a journey and it's always about getting there. Now, is my goal for Whistler? So I'll be at Whistler. I'm dragging Jeremy along with me at Whistler.
Yeah.
So you'll meet Jeremy at Whistler.
Cool.
And is it the 8 ascents? No. For me, it's I'm going to train. I am going to do strength training. I am going to try to do my very best, but for me, it's going out and hiking and doing something that's fun. Now, I will say lots of lessons learned, just like your lesson learned with the brick and mortar and the online business, is my goal is still to get out there. It's still to enjoy the outdoors. It's still to go hiking with my friends. It's still to
Yeah.
do all these things. And the mindset is now I'm training with uh, water, hydration, electrolytes,
Yeah.
eating on the treadmill, live in Wisconsin, very close to you, which we have 0 elevation here. I did come home from Stratton. I bought a incline treadmill, so I can go up to 40 grade, which is what our
Wow.
mountains can get up to. But doing some of that and knowing I am now going to have to hike through the night.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. You pick up those little bits and you go back and try again. And then you'll
Yeah.
pick up more every time you go. I kind of briefly mentioned the strong first thing.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Well, I'm a master instructor through them now. So I've moved up the rank. It took, I think 14 years to go from introduction to become a master instructor. There's 16 of us globally. Um, yeah,
And what does that take?
oh, years. So there's a couple different kettlebell certifications, kettlebell level 1 and level 2. Then there's a body weight and a barbell certification. There's an Olympic weightlifting course, and then they have some programming courses. So you kind of take the full curriculum, and then you're considered an elite instructor. And then you assist at a lot of certifications, and you'll get promoted to what's called a team leader. And then you start leading teams at certifications and helping to certify other coaches. They'll eventually promote you to a senior instructor. Then it's about being published, and how much you've really helped expand the community in terms of knowledge and strength and conditioning. not only the Strong First community, but then outside of that community as well. What have you done in, in your state, in your country and region? So yeah, I had to get a lot of different publications out there, and then I was promoted to master. But where I was going to go with this is still going to certifications today. I still pick up things, like, I don't know. There's never an end, right? You always learn, no matter how many. I've climbed Grand Teton 9 times, and every time I go, I learn something new, little tips and tricks to make it better, faster, more efficient, how to train people more effectively. You run into different scenarios, and it's the same thing with Strong First. Every time I go to an event, I pick up a little nugget. I'm like, ooh, I can take that, file it away, and help a bunch of people with that. So yeah. This I Can Do Anything podcast, I think a key to goal achievement is to just really love the goal, love the process, keep striving for it. And I think we'll either achieve that goal or some level of that goal, or come to realize we don't really want the goal in the long run anyway, and it's going to spin off to another, in another avenue. And then we just work towards that. And you can never look back and say it was a waste of time, because you might not have ever found that other avenue had you not started where you started. So, yeah.
I've talked to some people too from Stratton 22 that, didn't get their goal, didn't come close, didn't do. And I said, but you're here. You spent 20 weeks or more doing things that you loved. You either really didn't love it, it really wasn't a real goal that you really wanted to do, but something in you signed up because you put some money down for this.
Yeah.
It's an adventure, it's a journey, it's an experience. But if you don't love it, that's okay, but you learned a whole lot along the way, whether you realized it or not. And some people contacted me later and said, I really appreciate what you said, because I was really down. I didn't get my red hat. I didn't get the number of ascents I wanted. But you're right. I learned a whole lot along the way and at the event, and went home. And I can't tell you the number of people that after an event, they can't wait to sign up for the next one, regardless of how much they struggled, how much pain they were in, how much they endured, because it is so life-changing, and it really is about the journey. But I have
trials are where we grow, right? And hard things are where we grow. We don't grow through mediocrity, and so we need to be challenged. The trouble comes is when people try to challenge themselves too much. Like, every day in the gym, I have to push it to 100%. I'm like, that's not training. Once again, no athlete, crushes themselves 110% every day. They go in with a specific plan and a specific progression, and that's what helps them work towards that goal. Yeah.
I've got a question for you about Tetons or any other mountain that you climb with your clients. Have you ever had clients that say that they want to ascend Denali, Aconcagua, Kilimanjaro, whatever mountain it is, and you get there? Have you ever noticed that even when the person was training with you, you're like, I don't know if this is going to work out? Person gets to the mountain, and have you ever known that it wasn't going to be a successful hike?
Interesting. Well,
or maybe not a hike, a climb. Sorry, these are the
hike and climb,
the literal mountains.
Yep, hike and climb both. Yeah, there's some, I would say both ways. There's some people that surprise me. They'll go through the training, and I'll see how beginner of a level they are at the training. I'm like, we got a long way to go. And I'm not sure that they're going to do it. And he doesn't mind me throwing his name out there. Tony Drake is one of them. He's out of Waukesha, Wisconsin. And he lost 60 pounds, wanted to lose 100, lost 60 pounds in the training for it. And I was like, well, we'll just see, maybe a goal would be to get to base camp. And we got to base camp, and he went with his son, and he woke up the next day and he was hurting. And he goes to his son, he's like, oh, what do you think? And he goes, Dad, we're here. We're not coming back to do this again. We might as well give it a shot.
And what mountain was it?
This was Grand Teton.
Okay.
And he said if it hadn't been for his son, he probably would have like called it a day. But he's like, well, let's just get up and see how far we get. He ended up summiting, and then got back to base camp and we hiked out. It's probably the hardest thing he's ever did. Definitely surprised me. Then there's been other clients that I think they're a shoe-in. Just got off of Denali with a couple of Ironman triathletes, and I told those guys, I was like, okay, Ironman's one thing. That's a lot of endurance. Like Denali, we're carrying a 50-pound backpack, pulling a 40-pound sled. You have 90 pounds of gear on top of all the clothing and boots and trekking poles and either crampons or snowshoes that you're wearing. Your body weight plus all that probably amounts to 120 pounds extra on top of your body weight. I'm like, guys, this is kind of a strength endurance event.
Sure.
Yeah, if you feel uncomfortable squatting 100 pounds, putting a 50-pound backpack on your back is going to be pretty difficult. And so we have to get, I call it your strength reserve. You got to get stronger. Maybe if you could build your squat higher and higher and higher, get so strong that 50 pounds feels lighter, then the endurance event, it feels so more sub-maximal, so much easier that you can do it for a long period of time. So there's a huge strength component, and I could just tell by the way that they were chatting with me, they weren't doing the strength work. And I'm like, I don't think you guys are preparing. I don't think you're taking this seriously enough. Sure enough, 4 days in, they decided that they had had enough, and they hiked out on day 5. And we ended up being on the mountain for 24 days. So they were 19 days shy of success. Yeah. You're supposed to be on Denali for 16 to 21 days. And it was one of the most terrible, if not the most terrible weather year that they've had that they can recall in the history of the mountain. And so it was a pretty rough summit year. I think right around a 30% success rate on the season.
Yeah,
But
and Colin O'Brady just walks right up it in about 3 hours, and he comes down with Colin
yeah,
O'Brady's
yeah,
10-time world record
yeah,
mountaineering.
professional
Denali,
athlete.
6 hours for Colin, no big
Yeah,
deal.
professional athlete for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And that's the other thing is the faster you do it, the lighter you go, right? And so it's kind of this give and take, that those guys might have done better had it been that, Ironman triathlete, just kind of body weight, throw on your snowshoes or your skis and just go and then get to the top and ski down, right? Like that might have been right up their alley, but you throw on the soul crushing weight of 100+ pounds of gear and it was over quickly for them.
Tell us what you have going on for the year and any coaching that you offer.
Yeah. Oh, it's a big year. So I'm teaching my all-terrain conditioning course in Seattle, Washington, and that's also held virtually. So if people don't want to travel to Seattle, they can take it via Zoom. And it's live, and I treat them as if they're in the room, even though it's virtual. I put them up on a big screen. I can watch them just like anybody else in the room. So that's a 2-day seminar. You can see that at strongfirst.com. And then a week and a half later, I fly to Germany to teach the same course. And then headed to Patagonia in June. Then the end of June, I'm going to be on Mount Whitney. That's the tallest mountain in the lower 48 states. July, I'll be at Jackson Hole for 29,029. Then going to climb in the Grand Tetons with some of my Adventure Fit clients. Then I think it goes into, let's see here, August is Whistler. Is that right? Yeah.
Yes.
August is Whistler. Yeah, I'll be there with you, cheering you on, Robin. And
I'm
then
gonna bring some bungee cords, and then I'm just gonna bungee to you, and then you'll just help me up the mountain.
drag you up.
Yeah.
Push, pull, or drag, right? And then Mont Tremblant in September.
Oh, okay. And so
Yeah.
that's a new mountain for 29,029 for 2024.
Yeah. Yeah, excited about that. And then a personal goal of mine, I'm going to climb, or at least attempt to climb El Capitan in Yosemite Valley in October. So big
Okay.
year, big year. But a lot of that is work for me. So yeah, Strong First is a great place to find me, or adventurefit.us is a great place to find me and look up some of the training.
Are your clients all climbing mountains, or do you help hunters? So my husband, for example, hunts elk, and you need to be in pretty good
Yeah.
shape to go up and down those
Yeah.
mountains out west. Do you only do mountaineering, or do you also help people just get strong in general?
Yeah, I love all mountain sports. And that kind of trickles into endurance sports in general. So Ironman or just marathon training, ultra races, that sort of thing. And then yeah, I love working with people with a goal that if they're motivated toward their goal, whatever that is. I just got back this morning training an older gentleman that is has a long way to go, and I just love being kind of gentle with him and delicate, and I enjoy the process because I love to see people make progress, right? And he's super motivated towards his goals, and it's just his training session today, for example, when we first started, we could barely get through one round. And today he got through 3 rounds of it. 2 of those rounds, he was wearing a weighted vest. And like, wow, Joe, his name is Joe. I'm like, Joe, that like lifts my spirits, right? When you make such a that's a huge progress. I don't even care about the weight loss or whatever, he's got goals there. And I'm like, hey man, that has more to do than with the hour that I meet with you a few days a week, right? But I just
Do you
love
feel
when people they move better, they get stronger, they have better endurance, they have better balance, right? Those things definitely excite me. So I do have a select few clients that aren't kind of these extreme adventure sports people that I like to take on, and just as long as they have a goal, I'm not the kind of the rep counter sort of trainer, babysitter, here to talk about your day and be a psychologist, but I want to train you for a goal and see progress towards that goal, whether we succeed or fail, that's what I love to do.
let's talk about something that, me being a beginner a couple years ago, I still consider myself a beginner. People don't talk enough about the nutrition aspect,
Yeah.
and lots about weight loss. I'm
Yeah, it's interesting.
at this point not about weight loss. I'm about strength training. I'm about
Yeah,
form. I'm about getting better.
it's awesome.
I just feel like the weight loss will come, but tell us about nutrition, because really we keep hearing it's all in the kitchen. You can't outrun a bad diet. We've all heard that.
Sure. Yeah.
But nutrition is something that's not talked about. And I'm going to forewarn you, in 29029, all of us little
Uh,
newbies, we
yeah.
all ask about nutrition. And is
Mhm.
it really poor Colleen, voice of the mountain? I had her on the podcast a while ago. And
Yeah.
after the podcast, I kept saying, but what about the nutrition? And
Hmm.
Joni Rich, who's been on the podcast, but what about the nutrition? And it's for some people who have been in the game, I'm going to call it, for so long. Forget about people like me who didn't have great nutrition. Maybe we did when we were growing up.
Yep.
We go out to college, we're on our own. I'm over 18, I can have pizza every single night. So then to get back to the nutrition, I always say, is it always as simple as whole foods, vegetables, fruits, healthy fats? You can indulge, you can have a donut now and again, but it's not every day. It's not, every week. You can still eat what you want to eat, but I feel like there is such a gap with nutrition, and a huge gap with nutrition and endurance, or nutrition and strength. What can you say about that?
Whew. Oh, this is like opening up this could be a whole couple day podcast in itself, really.
Yeah.
And
You
I
can
don't
always
want
count on me to open up the can of worms.
yeah. And I don't want that to deter anybody from trying, right? This is the I Can Do Anything podcast, right? And
You
so
bet.
the way to eat an elephant, talking about nutrition, is one bite at a time, right? And so first of all, I think we got to understand that there's all sorts of different body types. And I love the fact that you're working for better strength, better endurance, better form, to move better, have greater range of motion, less pain, that sort of thing. When you train your body to be more athletic, whether you consider yourself an athlete or not, I think everybody's an athlete, and athleticism is something to be developed. It's on a spectrum. Whether you're Grandma Betty or LeBron James, you're on that spectrum somewhere, right? And you can make improvements and advances. weight loss is a health. I shouldn't say weight loss. I'm going to say a healthy body composition for you is going to fall into place based on your habits and what you're doing, right? And there's many different body types. I've seen very big people be incredibly athletic and healthy, right? And that's totally fine. Weight is just one marker of that. So you can see when somebody's healthy and they're heavy, or when somebody's unhealthy and they're heavy. You can see when somebody's healthy and they're skinny, or someone who's unhealthy and they're skinny, right? And so that's what I tend to look for. Nutrition is interesting, and like I said, we don't have time to get into everything probably, but I've read so many books. I'm going to talk. This will be interesting. There was a kind of a failure I had. I was right out of college, and you think you know everything. And I was working with this older gentleman who I respected so much. He was in his 70s and he had 4-pack abs. You could see his upper abs in his 70s. I love this guy, and I'm like, Marsh, what do you do for breakfast? And he's like, I don't really do breakfast. And I was like, oh, that's the most important meal of the day. Break the fast, Marsh. What are you doing? He's like, I know, maybe I should eat breakfast. I'm like, well, what do you do for lunch then? And he goes, I don't really eat lunch either. I'm like, what? I'm like, this is so bad. He goes, I know, I eat dinner and I go straight to bed. He's like, it's probably terrible for me, right? But here is this 70-year-old guy who has a low body fat percentage, super vibrant, very active, very healthy guy. He's almost 90 now. Still alive, and doing great. And here I am trying to tell him what to do. And then I read the book The Warrior Diet, which is the original book on intermittent fasting, right? And they start to talk about the science behind this and the process behind it. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what Marsh does. And so called him back and I was like, Marsh, is this what you do? He's like, yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm like, why didn't you tell me? And he goes, you weren't ready to listen. And so that was, yeah,
That's true.
that was the beginning of my process of being a little bit more open, or having curiosity when it comes to nutrition. It's not so black and white and staple. I started reading all these books, and one book will say eggs are bad. Next book says eggs are good. One book says vegetarian. Next book says carnivore diet. One book says breakfast is the most important meal of the day. Next book says breakfast is garbage. No breakfast, no lunch, intermittent fast, and just eat dinner. You know what the most irreducible basic of all of these books is? It's eat clean, wholesome foods. That is the most irreducible basic. Drink water. Your body is mostly made up of water, and we need to replenish and recycle that. Eat good, wholesome vegetables. There's a lot of interesting things about vegetables, from antioxidants and phytonutrients all the way to hormesis, which is taking little bits of poison until you become adapted to the poison. That's called hormesis. Well, vegetables have little bits of poison in them, which is interesting. So maybe one of the benefits of eating a high vegetable diet is that your body is adapting to a more toxic environment. So perhaps one of the benefits that most people don't think about of vegetables. But anyway, so I came out with what I call like the TNT. One of my businesses was called TNT. I called it 10 Commandments of Fitness and Nutrition. And it really focused on what to do rather than what not to do. Right? I think all the time you said it, like, it's okay to have a donut, right? Every now and then. And it totally is. I eat donuts. I eat pizza. I have cake. I have alcohol periodically, right? But what I really focus on is all of the right stuff first. And oftentimes I'm too busy doing the right stuff that I don't have time to do any of the wrong stuff. And I just forget it half the time, don't even think about it. And when I do, I don't really care that much because I did all the right stuff first, right? And so, I focus on water intake, drinking the appropriate amount of water every day. I focus on eating 2 fruits a day. I think there's this huge craze of carbohydrates being the devil. Well, carbohydrates are one of our sources of energy and fuel. And fruit, I mean, there's not a whole lot bad. And pick some good fruits. I have 2 fruits every day. I really focus on increasing my omega-3 intake every single day. I also have a focus on eating quality carbohydrates. When I do eat carbohydrates, I try to eat whole grains and as close to nature as possible. right? Less processed, the better. Protein, I try to keep my protein levels up every day. It's so easy to go through your day and get to the end of the day and like, wow, I had 20 grams of protein today. That's not very good. And again, less processed. And and I'm so busy focusing on all of the right things to do. Like, did I drink my water? Did I eat my 2 fruits? Did I increase my omega-3s? Did I eat 4 cups of vegetables today? Did I get a third to half my body weight in grams of protein every day? And I go through my list and my checklist. And by the time I've done all that, I'm so full to like have a donut or a drink. And if I do, I do. I'm not too worried about it.
That is a really interesting mindset. I don't think I've ever heard of it. And if I did, I wasn't ready to hear it, was focus on the right things first. So
Yeah.
that's great advice for anything.
Yeah. Yeah. We're too
Doesn't matter
busy to
what it
like
is.
thinking, we're too busy thinking like, oh, I gotta quit, drinking. I gotta quit, eating these donuts. I gotta quit this soda habit. I gotta, like all the stuff that you should not do. And it's like, I don't know, focus on all the stuff you should do and just see where all that other stuff ends up. It'll probably just over time just go by the wayside. You won't even realize it.
I like that. I like that a lot.
Cool.
Anything that you want to let our listeners know that we haven't touched on yet today?
Oh my. There's always so much to talk to. I don't know. I think being the podcast is you can do anything. It's just think of the effects of compound interest. It doesn't just affect our finances. It affects everything we do, the way we think. Thought process is just a huge what a factor when it comes to success or failure. I think of skiing down hills. We're from Wisconsin where there's snow. Remember when you're a little girl and you get in the toboggan and you go down the hill and you'd have to push through the snow, you'd trudge through it. And then the more you went down the hill, you'd groove that trail faster and be faster and faster and faster. I think that's how our brain works and that's how our body develops, right? And if we're skiing down the wrong hill, it becomes faster we go from A to B, positive to negative real quick because we've skied down that hill so many times. We have to sometimes ski down another hill and realize that takes time to develop a new path, a new train of thought, a new way of doing things with our mind or our body, a new way of thinking and how we react to things. And that takes time, but it will have compounding effects, right? It will get easier to ski down that hill, and that leads it easier to the next habit and the next habit and the next habit. And so, there's never underestimate the power of compounding effects, I would say, and keep striving towards your goals and believe you're going to get them.
I think that's amazing. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks for having me on. I enjoyed it.
And I look forward to seeing you hopefully in some meetups in Wisconsin. And
For
if
sure.
not, because you're so busy, I'll see you at Whistler.
Absolutely.
To all of our listeners, stay awesome and keep reaching for your anything.